Welcome to the Cryptozoology Show with your host, the Cryptozoologist. And there's this show continuation of the Lochness Monster, and this episode, Irish Lake Monsters. And as you can see, there's some mighty nice looking lassies there over in Ireland and through Europe here. And so we're going to be discussing some wild tales here of giant horse-haired eels, to my old buddy, the one of the earlier cryptids I ever studied, the Dobarchu. The killer otter inhabit many lakes in Ireland, along with leprechauns, the banshees, and a host of other creepy creeps. Along with this Scottish and Irish and sort of around these regions, they all have there's different names, but I mean, basically, it's all the same sort of thing, like a Surin sort of idea. The ones here, these Merrow, they're a bit different sort of looking, and we'll cover them. But as you can see, they're out there, sort of thing. So, anyways, we'll continue on. But first, what we're going to be doing is oh yeah, I wanted to cover a couple of little updates there, just so that we get this clear and stuff like that. When I talk about the lake monsters and that sort of thing, these are sort of my findings and things like that. But I also represent a zoologist who feeds some of this thing. And this guy has a beef with sort of the regular scientific like world in some sort of ways, because he discovered a lot of things and he has scientific degree and all that sort of things, right? So some of this stuff he provides me certain kinds of information, and it's pitched in a certain sort of format, right? But basically my sort of thing is that I'm an expert sort of on fish species and sort of lake monsters, right? This sort of stuff, as well as I know a lot about other cryptozoological creatures across the world. But some of the scientific like things, and this is more his sort of field and things like that. And so we just present these sort of different arguments along with a bunch of other people that are just randomly polled that agreed to do this, and sort of see which side that we try and show the anomalies out there and the different things, and that it's not all just a duck and a wave, and it's not everybody's imagination. There is things to these things, right? As well, and that to discount what you think is fairy tales, there's tens of thousands of these documents in ancient literature all over the place, and they're all describing you the same thing. This is not fairy tales. That there has to be some reality to some of these things. Now, the line might be stretched a little bit over the time, but there has to be, in almost every account I've ever ran across, where they have the strangest sort of tales, like the bird that eats granite walls. I mean, who on earth would believe such a thing, right? Yet fully true, right? And there is so many of these that the weirder that they are, the more likely that there's probably something to these. And considering they're even in ancient cave paintings from massive eons ago, this sort of correlates that, yeah, there must be something that people have seen out there that does look something like these sort of mermaids, right? And also the fascinating finding spears thousands of feet down in the ocean, trapped in a net. The guy's drifting by, he catches it, he brings up, and here's fish alive with spears in it. Oh, an update on one of the unicorn show and mermaid that I did a small one. I'll do a whole another one, the complete sort of history of them across the world and that sort of thing, a bigger one. But in that one, I made a mistake there. That creature was unidentified. I believe it was some kind of skate to, some kind of shark-like species. It's not 100% positive to identify which one it would have been, but it looks sort of like some of the, like a goose, or some of those, like there's these different ones, like a goblin, sort of like different ones out there that could be some kind of family similar to that, where it's in this sort of range, right? Like odd looking sort of in that sort of thing, some kind of ray or some kind of possible shark of some sort. But the thing is that whatever that was, these guys had witnessed that in the old photograph that I have. I should have put it in here, but it shows this bizarre sort of thing that, and they said when they were bringing it up that these sort of mermaids were spearing them, and here this thing was loaded full of these bizarre looking spear that fishermen like that don't usually use, sort of thing. So very intriguing sort of, there's so many of these, including George's sort of tales and different ones that I cover in there and things like that, that it convinces me with cave paintings and everything that there's got to be something to this. And I mean, it would be feasible, I guess, that there could be a sort of water version of some kind of intelligent, sort of human-like sort of thing. I mean, all I can tell you is that in my mind, it's so hard to believe, but at the same token, there's a lot of strange things out there, right? That is definitely, there is some kind of animals or some kind of family out there in the sea that we may not be aware of that can cause this kind of sort of sighting to a degree, because I mean, you're talking like even Christopher Columbus and all kinds of ones here, Marco Polo and these different, I mean, the list of endless of famous sort of people that claim also that they saw one, you know, seems just too out there to be all sort of where, and I mean, how does a guy in an African cave get the same mermaid as somebody in a native cave here in North America? I mean, that's a bit weird. Like, I mean, it's always the same thing, right? And how do you explain these thousands of feet down spears inside of a fish that's still alive? So obviously it couldn't have been speared from a guy from shore and survived for massive tens of years here to drip down finally into the ocean depths into some trench where some guys are, like, it would take too long for that to occur. The fish would be dead way before that, or would have been eaten from blood, the blood dripping. I mean, sharks can smell parts per billion in water, right? So if you had 1 gallon of blood in like near 3 billion gallons of water here, these creatures could smell that. I mean, can you imagine how diluted that would be, right? So, I mean, the odds of this surviving to that point would be, you know, trillions to one here. Like, I mean, it would be so slim, it's not even feasible, right? So how do you explain then these spears and where they don't belong to any native groups or anything like that? So could there be some kind of, like, even a lot of the cows are furry like and things like that? Could there be some kind of a sea ape of some sort that sort of, you know what I mean? And maybe it is true that the old sailor there, the guy's had too many beers, and now the sea ape turns into her a little bit. That's right. And I told you about that fellow that told me about the that strange creature that lives on an island in Jamaica, the fish man, right? And this is exactly the same tale. They say we'll discuss this after about how these sort of you know, the Merrow there, and also another one there we'll go through. They do strange things where the scales will start dripping off of them, or the fur, or this sort of stuff like that, right? So very intriguing, bizarre sort of stuff, but we'll cover that another time. But these are just one of the wonderful sort of things out there that may have some kind of bizarre sort of basis to them. I know for sure giant eels do, for sure, that there is basis to this sort of thing. And I'm 100% a believer in the Doparchu. I mean, gigantic sort of follower of this creature since a child. I believe 100% that it exists, and I think it's a giant unknown sort of species of otter, and we'll cover about that after. But first here, we got an update. We showed you on the Mermaid Show the terrifying sighting of the Lochness monster Warning, viewer discretion advised. The horror of horrors photo coming up next, and content may be scary to younger or the sensitive. So again, warning. Photo and subject may cause terror, right? Some that are even suspecting it could turn you into stone like Medusa could, right? Like, sort of stuff. So beware here. So, anyways, now they're out there, so run and hide, be terrified. The Ottawa River's one and only return of the Lochness monster. So he's back and more scary than ever. He may be back, folks. A new sighting sent in by a viewers of Jean Guy had a sighting again of the Lochness monster by a military-like viewer who was using night vision camera near the Parliament buildings. What you're about to see may chill you to the bone, make you want to hide. This creature was photographed in January in the freezing cold winter months there. So, thank goodness for Canadian patriots like this to stand out in that freezing cold weather. By this sort of secret military-like patriot guy, and who was looking to make sure downtown is protected from the beasts. So he's on the patrol and volunteered for Jean Guy apparently. so let's check this out here. So here he is. This is the only known photo beside that one we showed you there with some guy in a raft, and it said, "Welcome aboard the Lolian Love Boat." So that might have been him as well. But look at this terrifying creature. I mean, look at it here. It's absolutely fascinating. And what they did is they put a sticker around it. And the military sort of volunteer here guy, secret military, he homed in on it with these night vision glasses and was able to see that there were scratch marks in there. So this creature here was. First, he saw it like sort of going up. It might have came out of the water, and then it climbed up, sort of started scaling up to a higher outlook and howling like a werewolf. Notice the key features like in the first sighting, right? So, absolutely, you can see some of the different things here. This anonymous witness said the creature smelled like axolotl-like spray. It had a strange hat and fur covered. Right, so you can see it here. He's fully fur covered, right? And he's got this strange hat, sort of thing, as well as this glowing mutant foam. You can actually, what actually was glowing in their sort of night vision cameras here, you can see that stuff. So is that some kind of new mutated corona foam of some sort, or what's going on here? But absolutely terrifying. I'm trying to think of where this could be. It could be like in behind Trudeau's there, sort of looking on an outlook of some sort, possibly, or it could be like around Rockcliffe Park area, because all of these areas have had a lot of bizarre sightings over there, right? Now, here when they homed in on it, at the highlighted area of the heart, in the scratch in the tree, it says, HS loves JT. so we're not sure who these HS and JT is, but it could be one of these, could be HS or JT. But you can see here the creature has some kind of large reefer in its mouth. So, I mean, absolutely sort of bizarre, right? So anyways, I don't know what's going on here, but so let's look at the suspects here. You got, is this True Glow's man happy sort of warriors there? These poutine eating sort of pot-smoking, Labatt 50 drinking warriors there. Apparently they also carry Joe Louis with them and a bucket of Fabu lard occasionally. so it sounds like a wild combination, but you can see the creature here, like he probably did come out of the water, because look at his beard, it's sort of frozen and stiff, right? Like either that or the creature uses overabundance of sort of this axolotl spray or whatever it is, sort of stuff, right? So here's some other things too that so we pulled, and some thought it could be a skinny Sasquatch. Right, so just a normal Sasquatch that also smokes pot conveniently. Right. But you can see it's quite skinny. Maybe the poor creature, like maybe the Canadian budget with our budget has gone downhill so much, and all this sort of expenses and with Corona and everything else and importation of 5 zillion sort of expenses, right? This maybe he's not able to feed his half man, half ape poutine warriors. So maybe the poor creatures are swimming in the river looking for fish and stuff like that, in that freezing cold, fast water there, right? Is that possibly true? Glow dressed in disguise? Maybe he goes out there so that way they don't notice him. It's not because, I mean, it's similar. Like, I mean, he's sort of a skinnier sort of fellow. He's not massively huge, right? Could be him. Maybe even they're holding out on the budget as well. Sort of thing like this. Or is it possibly a shaman? Like they're known to do that. They dress up in these sort of wolf-like clothing and stuff like that, right? And maybe the shaman was doing some kind of ritual or something like that. Or possibly a loup de grue, which has actually the best sort of evidence for it, because a lot of loup de grues have been spotted there for at least since up to about the 16th hundreds, and even previous to that, earlier sort of mentions of natives or things like that of these werewolf-like sort of monsters, right? But or it could have been the local drunk named Bernie the Hood. Occasionally he hangs out there in the back or something like this. Or possibly Abdul, Madeline's insane werewolf bow that we highlighted his, his voice on the werewolf show, I think it was. No, it wasn't. It was the Ivory Bill Woodpecker show. Absolutely insane. But anyway, that could be him. Maybe he's looking for Jean Gui's, just a bit off the beaten track. He doesn't realize Vandy's a bit further sort of east, right? So that could be too as well. Or as suspected at first, just an over hairy Punjabi guy going for a swim. So whatever this creature was, I mean, he's definitely out there. So that, I mean, I would say that that's pretty good evidence there. I mean, thank goodness for these patriots out there protecting us against these horrific creatures. They could be out there. Maybe the Raelians are cloning them. Maybe they're naturally mating. Or maybe these hotties that go jogging by along and behind those parliament buildings and the cute yoga outfits and all that sort of stuff. Maybe some of them are being kidnapped. So beware there. Carry with you some also spray, and if the creature tries and jumps out of the bush there, you could blast it, right? Sort of thing, and bolt for the hills. But don't jump in the river, because apparently they can swim pretty good, right? So anyways, thank you, Jean-Guy, as usual, entertaining as usual here. But here also a similar beast to the Lochness monster, also frequently the Parliament buildings and Lover's Lane, along with Britannia Park and the Gatineau region from at least the 1600s. To last one hung out at the PM's place, and the Chateau Laurier wearing a top hat, often naked, that would mooch booze and howl at the foot of the Parliament buildings. Rare sightings still continue around the Blue Sea Lake region. I interviewed a couple in the 80s that saw a giant werewolf monster about 10, 11 feet tall, sort of idea, and the guy was leaped out in the highway in front of them. They were petrified, and I fully believe them. They saw some kind of thing. Well, I mean, they said it was standing right up and staring right at them, right? Like, I mean, so you can see here, this might have been this early photo of this werewolf guy that used to hang around at the Parliament buildings and that sort of thing. But this is exactly what he looked like. And sometimes, one account, he had a top hat, and he sort of went up to the top of the Parliament buildings, flashed out from a pre-Trudeau sort of character, some early politician, and stripped off his clothes and danced around the top hat, started howling naked in the moonlight, right? So the Ottawa region, we've definitely had some werewolves around, and they actually used to be spotted quite frequently around Rockcliffe Point Lookout and things like that. There was early accounts here. I found at least about 10 or 15 that I could have went through of different werewolf accounts just from around this region. Besides the werewolf man of the Parliament buildings, one of my ancient relatives actually had a run-in with him or something, so pretty funny. So anyway, so there definitely is so either this werewolf guy could live ancient sort of long times. Maybe werewolves do live hundreds of years as they claim. So maybe he's still around. Maybe there is no real all-less monster. He could be just simply this werewolf guy still hanging out there. Or it could be like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. Like, what if each prime minister is given some kind of secret formula and just so they can relax and be them wild selves, get back to their ancient caveman days, they give them this and allow them at nighttime to run in behind the Parliament buildings to release steam and stuff like that, and maybe find the odd hottie. So that could be going on. That's would explain these alien sightings up there, monsters in the river, mermaids, you name it, giant prophylactic beasts in the canal. I mean, Ottawa's got some pretty strange creatures. So, I mean, this guy didn't even need a mask. He had a natural mask on. Look at the coverage there over his lips. Pretty good there. So anyways, thank you, Shanky, again, and pretty entertaining. But anyways, here also in the region as well, a rare sighting of the 2.5 boob mermaid was spotted once in the Gatineau River. So here's this what maybe the mermaid might have looked like when she, crawled up on land, if she fell in love with a Jean Guy sort of character along the shores of the Gatineau River. Right. So this French angler there obviously must have had, I'd imagine, quite a bit of La Bat Sango that evening. And he started seeing them as sort of, blurred out, and she became sort of too. And it really was just, maybe it was Madeline, maybe she was going for a swim. The werewolf lady, who knows? But here's a real photograph of one of them there, and not the mermaid one, but as our human sort of counterparts there. There was actually a woman at this sort of a strip bar here in the region, and there was lineups for blocks, and they were all wanted to see this three-boob woman. So I can imagine these cuties here probably would have had a fairly large lineup, to say the least, there, sort of thing. That would be actually sort of a cute and bizarre sort of way to date a two-headed sort of lady. I mean, because they might have different opinions, right? So but I suppose though, if both of them were sort of grumpy and stern, right, it'd be a rough go, eh? Because both of them would be barking at you at the same time, do this or do that. Or sort of stuff like that, or they might be entertaining the other way, yes sir, sort of stuff, like if they're sort of quite timid, right? Well, then they would be, that would be also sort of comical, probably for some couples. So I mean, since the dating's lower now with the sort of Corona, this might be the gambit out there, is to try and find these rare two-headed sort of sirenes, mermaids, or landladies like these two were. So I mean, and then even in Ireland there was a two-headed Merrow. She had three green boobs that was seen in the River Ree. Shows that this rare cryptid, possibly from pollution or odd genetics or experiments by maniacal governments, are possibly out there, right? So beware out there. So be careful of some of these local waters, swimming in them if they're over polluted, like our filthy canal system, or our poor Ottawa River, or many of our bodies of waters around here. Now, because of overpopulation in smaller areas and people throwing the garbage instead of in garbage cans, our bodies of waters could start causing these sort of mutations, right? I mean, Nobody's even thought about that, but how does one know that these masks that people throw out on the street all over the place blow in the water and possibly a fish bites on it? Somehow, bizarrely, it could catch it. A lot of strange viruses that they think might have sort of mutated from human viruses have been, and found their way into fish because the fish uh, sort of going up and biting at sort of objects that people have chucked in there. I don't want to get into too much into it here, but I think you get the idea, and this is disgusting. So we need to stop these sort of habits, right? Like these poor ladies here, it's just a genetic thing, but actually they were very pretty sort of girls. They're based nice looking ladies, right? But that sort of thing like that, I mean, it must be a wild thing to be a two-headed sort of person. I'd imagine not the easiest sort of lifestyle, right? So, not certainly making fun of their calamity here, but these sightings existed, right? So, and the picture fits with it, right, and that sort of thing. But I mean, still, that this is a different thing. But I mean, in the water, these things occur. There's two-headed fish and all kinds of weird stuff, right? So the same thing is that we need to sort of try and keep our waters as possible and our air and our and normal environment as clean as possible, or otherwise all kinds of things like this can occur, right? I'm sure these two ladies were still blessed and all that sort of stuff, and that sort of thing, and tried to make the best of it or what have you, right? But the thing is that these things can occur, and it's not only from genetics but also from sort of things out there that are chucked in our systems. In the Thames River, there's a fascinating account of Merlin that had made this prediction like massive eons ago, and he said that he had saw that these two fellows were chatting to each other across the sort of Thames, right, and that they had a magic sort of stone that they could speak to each other, right? It sounds just like a cell phone, and he said that he saw that the river burst into flames, and that he saw that the fishes started growing extra eyes and all this sort of stuff, right? Well, exactly this occurred on the Thames with a nuclear sort of leak, right? So the same thing applies. I mean, we need to sort of not allow greedy companies to do these sorts of things, right? And I mean, so all kidding aside, but I mean, to me, these poor ladies, I certainly would have found it an honor to meet such an unusual sort of human being and to see what they would be like it would be fascinating, right? Because they would each be talking to you and maybe have a very separate opinions, right? So it would be very interesting to me being sort of just the way that I am, right? I would find them a pleasure, right? Some would look at them as sort of, freaks or things like that, but I certainly wouldn't. And to me, I can see that they sort of, you know what I mean, seem to be uh, of interest of thought there. You can see the expressions are different on each one and that sort of thing. So I'm sure they were certainly would have been fascinating to sort of meet. Sort of thing, but anyways, we'll continue on here. So that's the updates there with the Lochness monsters. So be careful, they're out there, sort of thing like this. But now we'll get on to my heritage here and some of the sort of fascinating sort of tales of Ireland here. So. From the Blarney Stone to a fight with a Triceratops described in a swamp in the earlier centuries, this absolutely amazing account of this guy, and he battles with this dragon, he says, and it's got three horns with a plate, and it's got a club-like thing of spikes on its tail. I mean, everything he describes as a Triceratops, right? And it was in a swamp, and it was eating swamp-like stuff, likely, right? So, I mean, it even fits like what they would have eaten and that sort of thing, right? So, absolutely fascinating, but first, we'll discuss the lough foil sort of loch here. That goes, it's fed by the river foil that goes into the ocean. Whales, seals spotted in it, horse-haired eels, along with this odd beast next, right? So, very pretty sort of place. Now, some university students were doing a documentary on the Lau in 218 when the species appeared. Although some claim a whale to a hoax, I doubt either is the case. Okay, and now a lot of people claim that because these guys were students and that they happen to be filming, so that it must be like a fake like thing. But there's some things that I really, really doubt this, extremely so. Okay, so here you can see this is a creature. It first appears before it gets into range of something that we can back the size of it here soon, right? Okay, so now here you can see a close up of its hump. You can see there's these bizarre sort of ridges in it. Any whales should have had a longer sort of back part here like that, and these ridges are extremely strange. It's very more camelish bump like, very, very unusual. So, and that now you can see here it finally gets in the frame of this sort of thing, and these students are over sort of here, but they were sort of filming, right? And definitely this creature is alive, and it cannot be. The reason I don't believe it's fake for many, many reasons, and I'll show you this in a minute. And I can see why people would think this. The first time I saw it, I didn't freeze enough of the frames and stuff like that, and it was a bit dubious. And then I kept going over it and completely sort of now will stand by this sort of thing that I highly, highly doubt this. It's not as good as the film I showed you previous from Serbia and stuff like that, but it certainly has enough validity to it that, to me, for sure, there's something really weird going on here, and that creature is way too big to be any sort of the normal sort of species here, and it's really not whale-like in a lot of ways here. None of the sort of whale-like species. It has even like a ridge-like weird bumpy thing up on the top. It's quite unusual. If it was a whale, it would have to be a very odd sort of one, and it's not shaped right. See, like whales, sort of, you have the same sort of width across at the top for a long length, right? And sort of thing like that. Like their head isn't much wider typically than where the neck starts off and things like that. So theoretically, this bump should have been way longer down here up on the thing, but instead the creature's way down, right? So there's some oddities here that not likely could be a whale of any of the typical sorts. I mean, if it had to be any sort of, it would have to be more in the dolphin-like variety of a smaller one where their back wouldn't be very wide, like it wouldn't be lengthwise too massively above the surface, right? But it seems very long. The disturbance is sort of too big for most sort of dolphins. Also, the back is nothing like that, and you should have seen some sort of like a little sort of other sort of things here down at the bottom. So it doesn't fit in there very well, like remotely, unless it was a very odd shaped one or some kind of anomaly to it of some strange sort of thing like that. As well, typically you'll see bubbles or different sort of, I don't know, different things like that. It seems a bit odd that if it is one, it's a pretty weird one. So next, now you see it going down here, and you can see how long this creature. It's making a great big disturbance. I mean, that's big. I mean, compared to the boat, sort of like it's going along. It's making a big, big wake. You can still see the darkness way underneath. So this creature is a fairly pretty big size, right? And it does not look like a whale at all. I mean, now in this thing, if you hadn't have seen that giant odd hump, but this one here, you can see that the hump sort of comes, then it seems to thin down more, and the creature has a sort of, so maybe that hump that we were seeing was actually part of its head possibly, or a rise near its head, and now the head is in the front a little bit, sort of like that. But whatever it was, here's the main reasons now that you start to can tell that it's not feasible, that it's fake really very easily. Okay, Everybody's behind. You can clearly see way off in the distance to the left and right that there is no other boats out here towing anything. And this creature is making a gigantic disturbance. You can see the look on these people. They're totally sort of perplexed by this, right? Sort of looking like that. And you can see that the creature's now going fully underwater. To tow this, you, in other words, then have to create something that you can make at a blink of an eye go up on the surface, pull him, then make him by twitching just your line. All of a sudden, now he dives down. You have a lot of intricate things here to do with now bubbling and all kinds of swirling and commotions all over the side. You got to make different parts of its body start making movements and all this, yet there's no boats around anywhere to be able to start towing this rope or controlling it somehow to do this sort of behavior, right? Not feasible. So that's sort of, and then here's the closest up at the end. And you can still see a part of his back there. Now some parts of his go like this. I mean, this is way too sort of big here, and you can see the bubble as he's like that. So either it's a very strange sort of shaped whale that's something weird, but I mean, still, this is not normal, like in the sense that scientists always try and pass these off as a log or it's a fake or this and that. But to me, clearly, this is a very good sort of piece of evidence of a very large odd anomaly in a lough here that should not be in there, right? And there's something to it, right? So I would say it's one of the better, higher in the top 10 films I've ever seen, sort of like this. And it cannot be a person towing it by ropes. It's way too huge to be mechanically like a sort of robot here. It would cost you zillions of bucks. You're not going to make any money off of this. It's not good enough to do that. If you're that good, you should have the monster coming out, opening up his mouth, eating fish, try to eat some of the people on the boat. I mean, because if it costs you that much, you'd be able to get that lifelike, right? Sort of idea. So in the highest probability, this is an actual real sort of film. It doesn't look to be sort of tampered CGI like stuff. And I would give it a, so even though a lot of people make these claims, they're not really analyzing it in the sort of, look at the end. You can see there's no way a guy could be sort of dragging the creature. It also meanders at different angles and stuff like this. So in order for that guy to make a turn now to go that way, he'd have to be in the screen and then get his rope on the other side of the creature and pulling it now that way. And you don't see any of these things, right? So I'd say in the highest probability that is a very high credible film. I thank those students. It's just another rare one I can add out there that conclusively show me that yes, in some small bodies of water, some big good dudes are getting in there somehow, right? Some are easier to explain, others aren't, but there definitely is real phenomena going on, and not the waves like the Nichols and the gang want to make you believe, right? So here, the Lowry monster, St. Mocha in the 6th century before Ness did exact same thing. He rebuked a water monster in Lowry when it attacked deer hunters. It connects to the River Shannon with stories as well of giant eels and pike so big that he reported to eat children. One early account that I've never been able to verify. I can only get a portion of it. The rest of the paper was destroyed, so I have no idea what this story really was about. But claimingly around here, okay, in this area, they didn't say it. They just said but you can. So I'm not 100% sure if it actually even was in the Lough or the river, Shannon possibly, or whatever, right? But somehow this giant pike at 293 pounds, it looks to be, or could be 298, a portion of it's cut out, was apparently caught in the sort of like in the 1700s. Okay, so somewhere, like I can't even imagine a pike of this size. There was another one reported in Ireland where a young child had went missing, and they caught this giant. Apparently weighed over 100 pounds. Okay, and inside they actually found the child inside of this giant pike. Right, so absolutely terrifying. There was one account. Priests saw a giant eel 15 to 20 feet long on the surface while fishing with a horse-like serpent head, right? And it had like a horse-like serpent head to it. So absolutely fascinating, sort of a pretty sort of a body of water, right? So I mean, yeah, you got some pretty big monster pike-like stories. Now, none of these pike exist nowadays. I believe there could be. I mean, it could be, but the giants of these 80, 90, 100 pound plus sort of rare sort of reports there and the, were mostly all from Ireland. A vast majority of them, a few from other bodies of waters, sort of thing, but a vast majority of them were from there. And a vast majority of them were from the 1700s, 1800s, before damming and messing with water levels and pollution and super low sort of population and clean waters loaded full of fish and high genetics where more monsters existed. They pass on the genes, the monsters continue, right? Sort of thing. And that sort of stuff. But there's still these giants out there, including, I even had a run-in with what I believe was by far the most titanic pike I've ever seen. Like, I mean, just absolutely astonished me that even some this size still exist out there, and these sort of warmer sort of waters of Ontario and Quebec, sort of like that. I mean, in ancient days and early times in Quebec and stuff like that, some real monsters used to be caught and things like that. But a lot of these giant pike worldwide have vanished in most areas. There's still some caught like 40, 50 pounds, 60 pounds, occasionally even a 70-pound sort of report here and there, but not verified, a lot of these sort of thing. But anything over that is non-existent, right? But these, you know, there could be some bodies of water have odd missing disappearances in them constantly, and you never find the bodies, and they're small bodies of water, and it makes you wonder, right? Sort of stuff like this, right? So, yeah, you know, very interesting. So Ireland certainly has some sort of wild sort of tales to it, but here we'll go on with one of my favorite early cryptids there, the Dobarchu. This cryptid, I'm sure, exists. Reports of beasts still occur in modern times and date back many centuries. Reports of a giant killer pike, likely as could be their prey or predator, depending on the age or the size of the otter, right, and that sort of thing. But they're the two big killers around there, including the odd werewolf tail. So, so they'd be the three, and a Bigfoot sort of monster. For a wild man that'll capture an Irish maiden once in a while, right? Sort of thing. So that's your four sort of the more maniacal sorts, along with the banshees and serins and things. But here's what he looks like there, and it's absolutely fascinating. Some are weird though, where the counts sort of are a bit interesting, where they make them sort of more wolf-like, and we'll cover that here. Like, sightings go back to the 15th century at least. One account in the 1800s in the Royal Society and antiquaries antiquaries by a Mrs. Walkington described it as a half fish, half wolf-like beast. Sightings still occur, especially in loughs shrines. Not sure how you pronounce that. In 1982, Irish lasses were going for a nudie dip in Lough Corrib when a large otter-like creature started swimming towards them, and sort of made a hissing sort of part got cut out here somehow. Anyways, the creature had made some kind of hissing whistle-like sound at them and scared them like a screech, and they bolted and sort of shot out of the water, right? So a part of it got missing. I don't know what happened there. In 1998, another sighting in River Corrib, which goes to see a large otter-like creature, appeared to a kayaker from Canada. It looked like an otter, except it had glowing orange red flippers on the side. So the like a plesiosaur like sort of thing. Interestingly, a similar account in 2000 A creature was seen by an artist, Sean Corcoran, on Lau on Omi Isle. It swam across the lake very fast from east to west, then jumped on a boulder, then back into the Lau. Was dark colored and orange fins as well. So fascinating. Here you have a sort of another sort of account of this strange orange reddish fins that are sort of, plesiosauri sort of that sort of idea, right? The whalish dolphin is sort of weird fins, right? Very interesting sort of thing. But here's one early account, the Glenid Lau incident. In 17th century, a woman got killed by a Dobberchu while washing her clothes on Glenid Lau. Her name was Grace McLaughlin, or McLaughlin. I'm not sure exactly if you pronounce it that way. She was attacked by the beast and she screamed. And by the time her husband came, it was too late. She was dead. The creature attacked him, so he stabbed it in the heart, and it screamed and made a whistle sound like some of these other accounts, right? It had a mate, and he killed it trying to attack him as well, so he ended up killing both of them. The creature on the gravestone oddly looks like a bit wolfish. Again, so maybe this is some kind of really peculiar, where two things are going on here, that some of the Dobberchu sightings are actually some kind of giant unknown sort of sea otter, right? Or that also that there is some kind of seal that is sort of very strange, that has this odd adaptation of larger sort of fins, like some kind of weird thing like that. Whatever it is, it exists, and probably both kinds, because the reports are quite consistent. I mean, it's too much, and apparently, who's going to make a grave and then blame it, and then you even make the like, okay, think about it. Let's say the husband bumped off the sort of wife and just decided to blame it on the Dobberchu, right? He actually had two creatures there, so obviously the police must have investigated this of some sort, like at the time, whatever it would have been, and they would have seen the sort of the monsters that he killed, right? So they would have believed them. So that's the thing is that, I mean, if the guy had made it up, and let's say they didn't see the bodies or whatever, and he just said this, and he makes, who's gonna now, you're this guy, if you dislike your wife that much, it's not likely now you're gonna go through the effort too of even making an inscription of what the creature looks like, putting it right on the headstone. But you fully would if this actually all really occurred, and you're, in terror, your poor wife, you've lost your wife, this evil creature, and you put it so that people could remember and know what this thing was, right? Sort of thing like that. So I would say in the highest probability that sort of, there's a few accounts that I mentioned in the book that I don't include in here, and things like that are personal ones that I've collected over the ages, and things like that. But the thing is that for sure this creature exists, and they're also from the sea. So it sounds to me like whatever it is, they come from the sea probably. This is their main sort of haunt. But they visit these inland freshwater lakes occasionally and sort of feed down just like seals do. So if it is a seal of an unknown variety, or some kind of otter, or both, they are existing here, and it seems more probable that's the case, that you have two different phenomena going on, but they're mixing both of them sort of together, right? But very interesting. But anyways, the Dobberchu, in my opinion, is a highly credible cryptid, just like the Waitorik is in New Zealand. My personal experience being in massive bodies of water all over the place in really remote sort of areas and fishing, I've been lucky where I have came across them, but because I was super quiet and sort of, I'm a fish stalker, right? So I'm quite quiet, and sort of, I was downwind from these creatures, and that's why I was lucky to come across them. But typically speaking, I mean, they live on the Otter River, even some of them, and even a few have been trapped in a Rideau Canal system in the past, and different things, these large river otters, but they can be extremely elusive. And just at mating time or different things, you might see a few more, but a lot of times they can be very, very elusive. So it's very, very feasible that these creatures, sort of, especially in a smaller sort of country like that, and maybe because people are around this sort of, yeah, yeah, like whatever it is, they're just a more territorial, sort of vicious sort of one where they're really willing to protect. Like they may come there even to mate, possibly. If that's the case, so they must bring their young with them or something like that, because you don't see too many reports of like small Doberchu. There's been some, but most of the time it's sort of like they seem to be adults, right? So maybe when people do run across them and they can be seen, maybe it's mating time, but they haven't had the children yet, or whatever, right? Like that sort of thing, right? It's hard to know, but definitely there is something to this sort of cryptid. It's very feasible. Otters can be extremely sort of elusive, right? So, and there's been new species discovered over the years, so it's quite feasible, and I would give it a high rating of a possible real cryptid out there, sort of, right? Now, lough monsters, they're part of the Killarney chain of lakes. I would love to fish this place. Lake Muckross has had reports of giant eels, seals, as well as large fish for centuries. This film we discussed was filmed more than a quarter mile away. So this is quite fascinating here. In 2009, now I'll let you watch. I don't like taking, like once in a blue moon I'll get a little bit of a film or something, but I prefer people go watch it where the guy posted it and let them see their stuff or whatever like this. I just want to discuss the frames here, that what it is that I seeing to back up this person's sort of film here, right? And and he seems like a very nice fellow. Sadly, his name got kicked out of here. But anyways, you can find him there, of course, on any of the sort of video channels, sort of thing, right? YouTube, what have you, and that sort of thing, and look it over, and you'll see it. And it's a very sort of interesting film. But I just, while you might not notice these things, so while you're sort of here, look at the phrase, and you'll see some very interesting sort of things about this that I find very, very peculiar. Okay. In the earlier part of the film, you can see here this sort of weird, sort of long-like creature, and I mean, this is a quarter mile away, so it can't be like a duck or these kinds of things. This is way too large of a disturbance here. You have to keep that in mind. And the rest of the loch's very calm, right? Yet you're seeing this large sort of thing, and it may be going side to side. So what I find fascinating about this film is, even though he says that they're giant eels, all of them, I'm going to tell you from a sighting of the Muskrat Lake monster, and also in the Ottawa River, that one of them later there will discuss what it is, that I'm pretty convinced that in that part of the film you're not actually seeing an eel, but this part may be. So this guy, I don't think this is actually what we'll discuss in a second. So it's very interesting, but there's a very longer sort of creature there that seems sort of thin, and it could be possibly some large sort of thing like that, right? But here's where it gets more interesting, sort of. Okay, here you can see right here, this one of these creatures there starts making this disturbance. Like, look at how glass clear it is, right? That's way too large to be sort of ducks or any sort of normal sort of thing to be fish of typical, unless it was some Titanic-sized sturgeon of some sort, that sort of thing. But now look at how much wider that it's becoming. Now it's creating a gigantic disturbances going like this, right? So absolutely fascinating, and you're watching it go along. Now, here's where you can see here, if you can see, it's very hard to tell this. Okay, look at the bottom gray blotch that you can see below the rock there. And you can see this round circular gray blotch. Then you see to the right a smaller gray blotch. Now look out of that big gray blotch. You can see, if you look very clearly, a steam of a jet propulsion of super fast speed Now go further way to near the bottom of the frame, to the farthest near to the right. You can see a white dot object there, and it's bolting. This phenomena was exactly filmed on the Muskrat Lake Monster, also seen on the Ottawa River, sort of thing like this, with the same jet stream that it made, exactly like that. But in both of those accounts, they were saw very close up, and they looked like seals, or possibly a sort of a whalish at the bizarrest sort of one that it could be in the Ottawa River one. But the other one was even closer, where it was for sure sort of some kind of seals. That's what they look like, right? And so, even though the guys putting about that they're eels, likely a bunch of them, where you see different ones, in this particular thing, this is actually, I'm almost 100% sure, is some kind of seal, and some species are sort of grayish white like that, and also a lot of seals have been known to get far off course from their normal habitat, so it doesn't have to be a necessary local Irish seal species that you would find around Ireland. It could be an off course as well, sort of ones, right? So I find this film extremely credible. It's the loughs is sort of obviously not, it has had these tales for ages, but you got two sort of phenomena going on. You got a sort of large horse-haired sort of eels, giant eel-like creatures spotted in the lake, but also that seals are visiting this lake, or may possibly a small population live in it consistently. One way or the other, I'm pretty convinced, at least this part of the film, that is a seal there. They do the exact same sort of thing with this really fast jet speed. The creature is white. It has the shape sort of a front of a seal, would possibly be like about that sort of size, and that sort of thing. So there could have been 3 or 4 of them playing around, and this is the only one that we're seeing. But the beginning of the film with that long creature in the front, I'm not as convinced that's a seal, and they may be actually right in that. So we got two phenomena going on, and you have this in multi bodies of water, so it's not the first. Same with like Lochness, you have giant eels to the more plesiosaur like sort of thing, and giant turtle heads and a variety of sorts, right? The sturgeon log-like sort, the humpbacks, and the different ones, right? So it's not just one thing, but this is more consistent of seemingly, you got a big fish sort of tail, the big back, you got the giant eel always, and you also have these seal-like creatures always, right? So I'm a big fan of this sort of one. I'm very thankful this guy got this on film. It's just another one out there that shows me that seals are in so many of these sort of, some you can fully prove where they actually caught them and all kinds of stuff like that, but others are sort of but clearly they're describing a seal in the event, right? So here, horse-haired eels of giant proportions, besides my Irish buddies, are reported near worldwide, like this piece witnessed by a teacher and 2 others on Lake Memphremagog that I interviewed there, and here's what it looked like, right? So absolutely, they're all over, right? It's not only sort of everything from Lake Michigan to all stuff I cover all through the book there. That fellow there, he's putting it together for me and that sort of thing, and he does interviews with me and some other people and that sort of stuff like that, but basically it's written like just like as if I'm talking to you, sort of basic idea, right? So, sort of thing like this. Part of the river Erne here, Lough also bizarre seal sightings, giant eels, horsehair eels, and a few dinosaur sorts have been seen around there as well. Here, the Merrow. These mermaid-like creatures have been spotted in many loughs, rivers, and the sea, especially along the shores through Ireland. Merrow are females typically, but male ones exist as well, and they're pretty ugly, sort of looking, apparently. They're not as cute as these hot green-haired maidens here. That sort of thing here. So they are said to have green hair and scales below the waist. of a green sparkle with webbed hands. Some have been said to mate with humans. One early account mentions local papers of a man finding actually two of them on the shore, and one was dead, and the other he nursed back to health in a bathtub. And it actually appeared in the papers, and apparently people saw them. Saw it, right? So this here, one ancient account in a diary in the 17th century mentions on Lough a sighting, which is a sea lough. A sailor resting on shore saw in the small lough this lady on right seemingly fishing or looking for something, splashing with her hands. Dozens of bodies of waters have these tales there, so pretty cute there. She didn't look too bad. So she's got the green hair going there, so that's all right. We had one in the canal that was like that, right? So so I'm thinking these sailors here, maybe a bit too much of that rum. What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Is that going on there a little bit? Sort of thing. So, but who knows? But all kidding aside, though, very interesting. Accounts here and that sort of thing, but I get a kick out of these. I just find them so interesting. They fascinate me here. Here are selkies all through Ireland, Scotland, Iceland. You get tales of selkies. These serins would sing to sailors, and then men would then jump in and vanish. If a man captured one, he would hide her magic pelt. She normally was furry, but once on land, her coat comes off and she turns nice and silken smooth, like this hottie over here from Russia, which will do some another lake monster ones on some of the Russian lake monsters, a much more thorough one that I did in the past, and a bunch of different ones there. I love Russia. Oh my God, man, what a place. So, I mean, definitely if selkies exist, if she's furry like that and she can turn into that later, I'll definitely go to any sort of Lough or any sort of one out there. If you're hanging out, just tell me where it is and I'll go. Absolutely, I wouldn't pass that up for $1 trillion. So I don't know about you, but that would be a pretty good sort of a selkie or a serin here to sort of catch there. But mind you, I wouldn't jump in the lake there. I'd be sort of scared of that. Who knows, though, that nobody knows what happens to them when they leap in the lake. They vanish, right? So, like, does she sort of now turn you into sort of a merman? And maybe because they're hot and you're sort of human, that now you're sort of, now that's why these sort of the male versions aren't that sort of studly looking, right? So maybe that's your sort of like the curse, that yes, you can become sort of one of these merman sort of people, but and have a hot wife like that, but but maybe you're cursed, right? Or maybe they sort of grab you and sort of hopefully they're not cannibals. I mean, if I was going to go by a cannibal, she'd be definitely a lot better than sort of thing than a typical werewolf sort of would be. Like Madeline there, I find her much more scary. So anyway. So I forgot in the last show, I don't know what happened here, we Moose lost a frame out of it. I wanted to mention about moose and deer and elk crossing a lake. I've seen so many stupid films where the guy claims this is the, Ogopogo when he's showing a moose crossing a lake. Any human being looking at it instantly knows it's a moose. So no native people have not been mistaking for thousands of years moose crossing a lake and thinking it's a monster. I mean, this is ridiculous premise. However, there is some truth to these sort of things, and I've actually seen this myself out in sort of lakes. A moose all of a sudden appear out in the middle of the lake, and I saw him start going along. But from far off, there is some sort of things here. You do have a sort of horse-like head here, sort of a little bit, right? B, moose, a lot of people don't realize this, are amazing swimmers, and there's records of apparently them. I've heard accounts of well over an hour sometimes, some of them claiming, but at least like verified stuff here I can find of at least about a half an hour that they can stay underwater. So as you can imagine, if you were like far off distance, right, and now the creature's sort of head pops up. You didn't see him before, and of course you would expect the moose to be swimming across the lake. You would have saw him like swimming across the lake, right? But instead, you didn't see him when he went down, and now he's came up. He's far off, and especially a female moose, maybe not with the big antlers, or in some of the reports they say they got antlers, right? This sort of thing from far off, and even a deer or these sort of ones is very feasible that yes, it could be that in some cases that's actually depending on how good the witness's eyesight is, and many things. But also, though, there's a lot of problems with it. Moose, I mean, most of their body's going to be way down in the water, right? So if you see a giant sort of wave here and the thing's like 30 feet long and it's moving and all, and a head that's sort of like this, obviously it can't be a moose, right? So, I mean, it's feasible in some of the far-off sightings, and definitely it has been mistaken in the past, but to put a film out and claim or to make a statement in a lake monster book and state this is the answer was a moose. I mean, come on, really. Like, I mean, again, as I showed you in the first part of Lochness documentary, this is not feasible, right? so anyways, even though this was a shorter sort of a presentation one, and things like that. There wasn't much use of continuing on repeating the same sort of, pretty well, I'd say like at least like 70-80% of the Irish loughs around have some kind of wacky tale of some sort floating around in them of a giant pike monster to some kind of wacky thing, right? So, I mean, all of them have the same sort of things, and it's more of just a repeat from one to the next, right? So it was a little bit different. The other ones, you had more anomalies, and Lochness had a piles of anomalies, so you could discuss it. But I mean, there's no use keep just going on about the same sort of eel monster that you're seeing consistently in that. But I did want to mention. There is one early account that you can find, and I cannot find the name of this lough now, but there's this wonderful sort of early sort of a diary of this guy, and this is in the later 17th century, and he mentions that in the lake that there used to be, and he said now they're rare, he had saw one, and he was describing it as he's actually writing in his diary along the shore, and he said that there was these beautiful pink seahorses that lived in the lake, and he said they were about 6 to sometimes over 10 feet long, but typically about 6 feet long. He said they had the head of a horse and the body sort of like an eel, but they were sort of pink with this beautiful sort of like hair, like sort of pinkish hair that went down as sort of on the behind its back of its head and sort of went down. And he said that they used to be common. Now, here's the key things. He said then they started building up and fishing around the lake. He said now they're almost none seen no more, right? And he was concerned about them. So this guy is actually a early ecologist guy, actually concerned, and this shows how quickly we just killed the lake monster off within 20 minutes here, seemingly, right? With just a bunch of people now all of a sudden fishing, and you get the same accounts, as I mentioned, with the ranger there seeing the seal in Yellowstone Lake, the last reports, like around the 60s or something, and this sort of thing like that. All of these, many sort of reports, they seem to sort of like vanish at a certain very quickly. And I cover a lot of these extinct like lake monsters that may be extinct now because the reports are so old and none to exist, yet they couldn't have been hallucinations or a boat wave likely or all kinds of different things, right? So these are a lot of things to think about is that we may be in a lot of these lakes that where there used to be these great serpents, that there really was some kind of waterish dragon-like thing, like I showed you in the previous one in the sort of over in Scotland there, when I show you the sort of a pipe sea serpent there, he's absolutely fascinating and very like the early tales of the orms and the dragons and that sort of thing, right? So there could be some of these things still out in existence in some of our sort of waters there, but for sure in a few there is some very strange anomalies of animals we have not discovered yet from science, right? So, anyways, hopefully you enjoyed this a bit of a shorter presentation there. If you want to know more about, I mentioned some other Irish sort of tales and some of my other ones from the Little People, and even in the Ghost, the sort of the Vanier witch and the sort of the leprechauness and these different ones, right? That are the extremely sort of cute Irish lassies, right? So, anyways, hopefully you enjoyed the sort of a bit shorter presentation here. But, anyways, if you have any sort of cryptid sightings there, you're certainly welcome to leave me a story. You can email me or go there to the site and leave it and that sort of thing. We don't sell or give anybody's information or any of that. We're just interested in the stories. The odd one will put in sort of a publication or that sort of stuff, or cover it on one of these shows and that sort of thing like that. So thank you very much, and for the new subscribers. Some come and go there. Like I said, some of the things we mentioned there upset the odd individual or whatever, right? But I mean, these are just different viewpoints out there and things like that. But I certainly give you a lot of sort of things to think about, and about different ways of looking at it and sort of stuff like that. It's not all just, you know what I mean, dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago and it's all a wave. Like, I mean, all these things, there is way more to it than that, and it's just not as answerable like that, right? So anyways, hopefully you enjoyed this, so stay tuned for next show, and have a great day. Bye for now.